Survive and Advance on the Gruely Truth Sports Network. Survive and Advance is brought to you by Replenishing Care Technologies, the future of sports medicine. To find out more about Replenishing Care and all their products, go to thegruelytruth.net and click on the banner at the top of the page. I'm your co-host for Survive and Advance, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my co-host, who's in Indianapolis Colts. We're beaten by Tom Brady again, so it's just like Peyton Manning's still there. Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Doing great. And yes, my beloved Colts took it on the chin last night. But luck continues to look very strong. His progress is just coming along fine. The team is totally outmatched and very, very injured, beat up. And give us a couple years and we'll be there. It's going to take some time for this program to rebound. But it was a good game at times and kind of something that Fox paid $8 billion for, whatever they paid to get the right to do that, for getting a blowout. And I'm sure nobody watched the game besides me.
And some other Colts fans. I bet all the Patriots fans watched it. Today, we got a little bit of NCAA corruption, as always. We're going to talk about if the Notre Dame Fighting Irish are for real or not. We will give our NFL upset alert picks for this weekend, week 5 in the NFL. And we'll talk a little Dallas Mavericks. And with the Mavericks, you can talk about a plethora of things. They hired an ex-pro gambler. There's more sexual assault allegations against them. So Mark Cuban's doing a bang-up job there at Dallas. We'll talk about that later on in the show. But first, we're going to start off with Brian Bowen Sr., who is accused of agreeing to a pay-for-play scheme to receive $100,000 from Adidas to send his son to the University of Louisville. He broke down during his testimony on Thursday in a federal criminal trial involving bribes and other corruption in college basketball. Within the first 10 minutes of Bowen's testimony, Assistant U.S. Attorney Edward Diskin asked him about his son, and Diskin asked if Tuggs, which is what they call his son, is in school, and Bowen Sr. answers no. Why isn't he in college? He cried for several minutes. And basically right now, the kid's playing in Australia because of all this stuff that went on. Of course, Louisville, Rick Pitino lost his job. Chris Mack's now the coach there. And the more you read into this, and the more you see all the players that are given money, I mean, this is sickening. I mean, according to Bowen Sr., Steve, Dawkins told him that Arizona assistant coach Joe Pasternak offered $50,000. Oklahoma State assistant coach Lamont Evans offered $150,000, $8,000 for a car, and additional money to buy a house. Texas assistant coach Mike Morrell offered to, quote, help with housing, and Creighton assistant coach Preston Murphy offered $100,000 and a good lucrative job for his dad. I mean, Pasternak is now the head coach at UC Santa Barbara. And when you look at this, I don't think anything can get sleazier than the NCAA right now, even Congress. I mean, this is an absolute joke.
All right, let me play devil's advocate here for you for a minute and get your ire up just a little bit. What's sleazy about it? Why isn't it just legal?
This is what's
Wait a minute now.
Hold on. I'll give you sleazy.
Whoa. Hang
on. It should be legal. That's why.
Right, that's what I'm saying. We can do this all for coaches. All the coaches can get cars. They can get housing. I mean, I'm sure most coaches' houses are taken care of. Their cars are given to them by dealerships free. The coaches, the staff, everybody but the players gets everything you just mentioned. They get payment. They get bonuses for this, that, and this. They get money, millions of dollars to go somewhere. What's sleazy about it? What's sleazy about it is that the NCAA
why would you ask
says
me the
that as a
question
player,
and answer it?
All right,
You said what's sleazy about it? Because
I'm going to go back to
both
watching
agree.
NASCAR. I'm going to go back to watching
But
NASCAR
really,
practice
you
aloud
asked me
right
and
now
you're
while
going
you
to answer
ramble.
for me.
Ramble.
I'm not going to ramble.
Tell us.
I agree with you. The thing that's sleazy about it is these coaches are paying money for players, but the players, I mean, that's the only money they're getting anyways. And the coaches are making millions of dollars a year. Hell, the assistant coaches are making hundreds of $1,000s a year. And I know you watched it because you told me to watch it, Student Athlete on HBO, which that's as sleazy as it gets. I mean, you've got players here. What was the statistic that was on there? I know you wrote it down, on how many players are playing NCAA basketball and football and how many of them get drafted?
91,775 players played either college hoops or football in the course of when they made this documentary. 303 of those were drafted. Now, 303 were drafted. It doesn't mean 303 got paid to play. It means 303 of the 91,775 were drafted. And that is just basketball and football. That's not even talking about baseball, tennis, golf, swimming, whatever other collegiate sport there is, lacrosse, soccer, that all have professional ties to them as well. So, yeah, but before we get into the student athlete, which I think we need to spend a little time on that show too. If you haven't seen it, people, go to HBO if you can and go watch this documentary. It was executive produced by LeBron James. And, I mean, LeBron's trying to make his mark into the entertainment world. He's done a hell of a job for one of his first big projects. So, you know, it's really a good documentary on what these college athletes really endure. The average college athlete, not the superstar. But back to the other thing. The only thing that, to me, that's sleazy about this whole Gatto trial, I'm going to call it, just for the sake of giving it a better name, the NCAA Gatto trial or the shoe trial, is that the athletes, again, it just shows how screwed the athletes are getting in this whole thing, that all this money is getting changed hands, and everybody's getting a piece of it except for the athletes, and it's being offered to them, and we're just basically denying them their right to profit off of their talents. And that's kind of really brought up in the student athlete HBO documentary, that nothing more is going on here than we're denying these kids who have a God-given talent the right to make a living off their talent when they're in their prime and can make the talent. And that's the telling tale of the student athlete documentary, is that once they're discarded because they no longer possess that talent, or that talent's bypassed them, that they're cast aside like pieces of crap and left to rot in the fields for themselves, which is exactly what happens. So the only thing that's sleazy to me in this whole process is just the NCAA. Just the greed monger, just a bunch of sleazy people that rake money in left and right any way they possibly can, and then give you a song and dance how they're protecting the integrity of our youth.
Yeah, and the thing that's really sad is this goes all the way to high school, because Bowen Sr. also told the jury that he received $2,000 per month from Shane Hireman for Bowen II to attend La Lumiere School in LaPorte, Indiana. Herman was the head coach, or Hireman, however you say it, was the head coach of La Lumiere, or whatever. I don't know. What the hell's a school in Indiana called La Lumiere anyways for? But he's now an assistant coach at DePaul. But this kid was being paid to play high school basketball by his high school coach. He began playing his playing career, and this is the problem. It's the AAU stuff combined with the NCAA. But at least the AAU gets the kids paid. I mean, they have where he's playing on one AAU team and he's being paid, $4,000. He switches to another team because they're paying him $10,000. Then he switches to another team because he's getting paid $25,000. And I don't have a problem with the kids getting paid on it. My problem is the NCAA basically has slavery now, and it is. It's just that you're working for free. And the thing that worries me is you talk about only 300 and some get drafted. How many of those other 90,000 leave with injuries that still need treatment when they're done? And the school, once you're out of that school, they don't take care of your medical care anymore.
Well, in a lot of colleges, they don't take care of your medical care to begin with. That's a little misnomer there, too. Most of them, they'll play off of your own family insurance if you have it first.
Yeah.
I know when my son did D3 football, we had to prove that we had family insurance so he could play. In other words, the school that he played at basically said, and this is the NCAA still, NCAA Division III, which you want to talk about the garbage cans of the world, look at NCAA D3. They don't do crap for those guys and make profit off of them. Because my son played D3 football. But we had to have proof of insurance. So anytime that Ross got injured, he did break his thumb or his finger and had to have surgery on it. That came out of our insurance money. The university did nothing and paid no part of that whatsoever. So for the most part, when you're playing in a college sport, they get your family insurance if you have it. If they don't have it, then they accommodate and they get donors. Basically, there's enough doctors and physicians out there, or maybe they build a university to some degree. I don't know what the arrangements are there, but still, the NCAA still has the university's pry on the family's insurance to pay for everything. So that's not necessarily free either.
Right now, there was a law passed 2012 where they passed something. The current policy is every college and university is free to create its own policies regarding health care coverage insurance. Certain colleges assume responsibility for all medical claims related to athletes, while others do not. Currently, there is no national regulation regarding this subject. Because of all this, students and parents are often left confused, not knowing what is actually covered and what is not. This has left many college athletes and their parents in debt over their heads with medical bills. One confusing part for many people comes when a student is covered by his parents' insurance policy. In many cases, these policies have exclusions regarding college sports, especially at the varsity level. So, yeah, even if you're a Division I college athlete, you may not even be allowed to play unless your parents have insurance. And let's look at it like this. They also talk about the number of poor, disadvantaged kids that are on D1 scholarships that may not have insurance, or the insurance policy is not as great. If they get hurt, that can put the family completely under.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to, I have no real clue. Well, I have a large clue, but I'm flabbergasted in my thought process into what the NCAA really even does. They're just a profit-making marketing machine for college hoops is all they are. They're a clearinghouse to sign contracts, to get sponsors, to bring money in, to make profit. They hide under a 501c or a government nonprofit organization. If they do this much good for student athletes on a day-to-day basis, they need to be touting that a lot more, because I certainly can't go and name a lot of positive things that the NCAA does. I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure. And again, my experiences with D1 with me at Indiana, which everything was covered. I never thought or worried about anything at Indiana. And then my son at D3, where he had to basically buy his own pads for the most part. I mean, we bought his own shoulder pads, and we bought him his own helmet, because the equipment that they had was so antiquated or so beat up. It's like, I don't think this is safe, Ross. I don't really want you running around playing in a helmet like this, knowing you're going to be working on the practice squad, taking hits from the starters. And, being a freshman coming into a D3 program, he had the crappiest equipment, and most of it wasn't even really what I would call safe. We had better equipment in our youth football leagues than he was being given at a D3 program, which is NCAA monitored, gauged, and run, and they charge money from ESPN, pays them to show the D3 national championships. They take ticket prices. There's money coming in, and yet none of it was going back out. So I'm not even really sure what the NCAA does. I think the thing here with this trial, the NCAA ought to be really careful, because this is going to create a lot of national exposure as to what the NCAA has been trying to hide for so long, in the fact that they don't do a lot for the student athletes. And you're going to see a lot more of this exposure. Again, I think of kids that are coming out and getting paid by the AAU teams and by the shoe companies. And this thing's going to blow up into a huge mess. Now, we have to remember, too, there's two separate things going on here. The Gatto, I call it the Gatto trial, again, for lack of a better term, is a criminal trial for tax evasion and wire fraud. It really has nothing to do with the regulations of the NCAA. The landscape just happens to be the NCAA and the AAU in a pay-for-play scheme. That's all just going to be rules violations within the NCAA. But you're going to start getting a lot of names brought down here I mean, and we're talking about kids that could be from universities like Indiana University, Purdue University, Notre Dame. I mean, because I think this is so widespread and goes on so much that there's going to be a lot of kids and coaches and players drugged through the mud here now if they open up this can of worms the way it's getting opened up right now.
Yeah, and I think this is only going to get worse, as you said. Hopefully it does. I mean, hopefully it gets so bad that the NCAA has to do something, but I don't know if that'll ever happen. Next up, we're going to talk something about something that's near and dear to your heart, which is Notre Dame football. And we've seen this in the past. They open up, they're playing well.
Are you not going to talk about the show?
Well, I thought I started to, and then you turned away from it, so I didn't think you wanted to.
Okay, well, let's go back to it. I wanted to finish one before I move to the next.
Then.
All right, go ahead, lead us off. You like to ramble?
Well, yeah, I ramble. You ramble. I make cognizant points every once in a while.
Coherent. It's coherent. The word you're looking for is coherent.
Yeah, okay, from the guy that can't spell sheep, if you spot him, the S-H-E and a P. All right.
There's one more E in the P.
I know. I see that proves my point. I said if you spot him these letters, which means there's one left out. But you did prove you could spell sheep, so I'm wrong. I apologize.
You know that I worked 4 years for Dan Quayle when he was senator in Indiana, and the famous speech that he wrote, and he misspelled potato with an E. I wrote the potato speech. Yeah, I misspelled potato.
So it was almost like you were vice president. So from now on, I'm going to call you former vice president, member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, Steve Risley. But if you watch student athlete, you go anywhere from a player. I mean, you just look at these guys. I mean, most of them, after they graduate, they're unemployed. You got one guy that's living in his car. You got Coach Shoup, who used to coach at North Carolina, and if you listen to our interview with Rashad McCants, you know how that went, who then went to Purdue. But since he advocates for players, he's not even allowed to coach college football anymore, which is a huge – I mean, it just blows my mind.
Well,
because
now,
when you're you're supposed to take care of the players.
It's worse than that. It's not that he's not allowed to. He's gotten no offers. And this guy's a guy who's coached in the NFL for 12 years. And the story is John Shoup is a journeyman offensive coordinator type coach who coached in the NFL for various teams for about 12 years, got lured to North Carolina by their coach telling him it was a better lifestyle, more family, work-life balance, and it was a better situation for him. He wanted to make a change, get out of the NFL due to the grind. Came to North Carolina and then got caught up in the and actually, if you watch it, they used the plantation education phrase in the show. I thought that was great. They used McCann's phrase. They talked about plantation education. And it was interesting since we had done the show with Rashad. And he got caught up in that as part of it and then eventually got fired from that, took a job at Purdue, and then realized what had happened at North Carolina was so wrong about how they were railroading. And I thought it was funny, too, that they talked about all the players were complaining about having to take Swahili.
Yeah.
They never – you got to watch this show. You got to listen to our show with Rashad McCants, and then you got to watch this show. It ties together, which validates it, in my opinion. It just validates what Rashad's talking about, and then it validates what really went on and what went on in North Carolina, and then it makes you sick that North Carolina wasn't punished for it. That's the third part of this whole thing, is that North Carolina got virtually a slap on the wrist for what should have been the biggest violation of NCAA rules of all time, rule violating in the NCAA, almost as big as the shoe deal. But anyway, so he goes to Purdue, and then he starts trying to be an advocate for the student athletes. And then he's politely brought in and told by the Purdue coaching staff that he's not going to win this war, and he really ought to change his song and dance. And he chooses not to do that and stays an advocate, and eventually loses this position. And throughout the course of the hour-and-a-half documentary, they keep going on a timeline and showing that he's gotten no offers from anybody, which is kind of the Kaepernick rule now, where he's been somewhat by the NCAA probably blackballed from going back into college. And most likely the ties between the NFL and the NCAA, he's probably somewhat blackballed. Now, we can't prove any of that, but, generally the theory is if it looks like crap and it smells like crap, it's probably crap. It kind of applies to this situation with John Shue. And we're trying to get John Shue to come on the show. I know we're trying to reach out to him. We would love to have him on and give him a platform. Yeah, and we would love to have him on and bring him on and let him talk, because he fits right in with Rashad McCants. And it'd almost be great to have him and Rashad on together and let these two guys talk about what went on, because I think they'd be pretty much on the same page. But so now he's entirely been what appears to be, and I have to say alleged because it is alleged, blackballed from coaching at any level higher than high school football, which is what he's doing right now. In a town, you'll find out if you watch the documentary. But it's a town where the largest private residence in the United States sits in the hills of the Great Smoky Mountains. So if anybody knows, they can do their homework, they can figure out where that is. Pretty easy to do. But his story is fascinating in its own right. But it breaks down 4 different athletes. One who's getting all kinds of offers, ends up going to Kentucky, makes his pick, and you follow his pathway through. You have one. The interesting one is the football player, and what was his name? Silas Natita.
Yeah, the running back from Baylor.
The running back from Baylor. This kid comes out, and he's a walk-on to Baylor University. And, he realizes that most walk-ons come on, and they get to be tackling dummies. They get to put on the jersey and go to practice and get the training table and everything like that. But he's paying his own way. Eventually, he has to drop out of school, or he's thinking about dropping out of school because they can't afford it. He's paying his own way into Baylor, which is an expensive college to go to. And so he gets help, unassumingly, from just another family of a friend who sees his plight and just says, "Hey, look, stay with us. We'll give you some money, to take care of you, and a little bit to spend. So you got some money to spend, and you can sleep at our place, and you hang out with our son. You're his friend, whatever. You can just do that." He gets suspended by the NCAA and basically kicked out of the football because of rules violations of an alumni, or I think the guy wasn't even an alumni, was he? He had a grandson that was going to Baylor. I'm not even sure that he was an alumni.
And the worst part of the whole thing was when he wanted to go to the Dream Bowl, he wasn't allowed to participate if NFL scouts were there.
Now, wait, get this right, Mike, because this is important. So get this right, what you're going to say. As I was going to say to you, explain to what happened to this kid now, who's trying now to rectify a bad situation. Walk him through how this all happened. This is really important. This is the NCAA at its best.
He goes to the Dream Bowl, which he's got to pay to be a participant in. It's his money, all right? Now, when he wants to work out for the NFL scouts, he's told that it's an NCAA rule that since, I guess, he was not allowed to play NCAA football, that the NFL scouts are not allowed to be on hand when he participates. He gets hurt while working out. It's a foot injury. He's limping all over the place, but it's his last chance. So he wants to play in the game. Now, as long as the NCAA or the NFL scouts are there, he's not allowed to be there. The game goes to overtime, and the NFL scouts leave because they got to go to the East-West Shrine Bowl. So since they've left, he's then allowed to dress. He plays in the overtime. He scores the game-winning touchdown. No NFL scouts see it. And to make a long story short, which is too late because it's already long, was he now plays in the German Football League and makes 400 euros a week. And I don't know why the NFL would not draft a kid that was ineligible by the NCAA unless they are, unless it's just a feeder system for the NFL anyways, which we all know.
All right, well, here, you missed one key point, which is why I said go through it chronologically fair. He was kicked out of Baylor after his sophomore year in school. Okay, right?
Yeah.
He played 2 years, then they found out that he was getting the help, financial help, or the room and board from this family. And he went to the camp, and the camp said, you have to have 3 years of, and the NCAA and the NFL have a collusion rule that you have to have 3 years of college football before you can be drafted. Okay? So he got kicked out. He got canned by the NCAA after 2 years. All right, and then went to this camp, no longer a part of the NCAA because they kicked him out. Yet when he went to this dream camp, the NFL, which is having their scouts there in the CFL, said, no, sorry, you can't participate because you don't have 3 years of eligibility or 3 years of college experience under you. Yet it wasn't his choice to leave Baylor. He loves Baylor and loved to be there. The NCAA screwed him royally when they said, nope, you're out of here after 2 years. We bar you from ever playing NCAA football again. He goes to say, okay, I'm talented enough. I did well at Baylor. I'm going to just go and try and get into the NFL and try and make money. And then the NFL, in collusion with the NCAA, turns around and says, you can't do this because you don't have 3 years of eligibility. He has no opportunity to get 3 years of eligibility or college play under his belt anymore. And that to me was the most poignant part of the whole thing, was the NCAA not only screwed him once because he's poverty level, and he had, his mom and dad were divorced, they had no income, they had no college savings, and he's trying to play. He's doing well for Baylor. He's a starter on the team now, and they ban him. Baylor cast him aside, and then he goes to try and take his wares to the NFL, and the NFL says, no, according to NCAA rules, the deal we got with them, we can't touch you. So he can't even play until the second half of the game. I didn't really catch it at the end. Did he get the MVP of the game? He had a big trophy in his hand.
He had a trophy.
At the end of the game.
Taking a picture.
I don't know if they really clarified.
To win the game, it didn't really say.
But he scored 2 touchdowns. He ended up scoring 2 touchdowns in the second half, and led his team that he was participating on after the scouts left. So no scout saw him play. But as you said, he ends up playing in Europe on a really bad situation. But he's playing football, and therein lies another whole story, this whole thing about you have to realize when the games quit you. He's making $400.
Don't. I mean, you also have the Shamar guy, the one who goes and tries out for the Philadelphia Soul Arena Football League. He ends up going and playing for a lower-level league, which they don't tell you that. The High County Grizzlies, Josh Resignalo, the guy that actually coaches them, I know the guy.
Yeah, you know this. I know you knew this, yeah.
And to call him a professional coach, number one, is absurd. Number two, in the Arena Football League, these guys usually making $600 to $800 a game, where in the league he's playing in, as he said, his check was $130, and he's 30 years old. And the only thing he's doing is damaging his body. There is not an NFL scout in the world that is going to sign you once you're past the age of 25 or 26 playing in an indoor league. And with indoor leagues, you got guys that get tryouts. You very rarely get the Kurt Warners or the Fred Jacksons that make a career in the NFL coming out of the arena in the indoor football leagues. And, I mean, arena and indoor coaches will pry on players by giving them false hope by saying, well, we sent 6 guys to the NFL last year, which they didn't. They sent, probably 2 guys, maybe, if they're lucky, to a tryout camp. But these players, I mean, I knew when I coached arena indoor football, I knew of coaches whose guys would get opportunities to work out with CFL teams, and the coaches wouldn't even tell them about it because they didn't want to lose their best players. And in arena and indoor football, if you're the head coach, you're making pretty good money. Even in that league where he was making, for the High County Grizzlies, making $130, that head coach is probably making at least $1,000 to $2,000 a game. Arena Football League, the players make $600, $800. The coaches make significantly more than that, or the head coach does. I mean, in indoor football, the only guy that's getting paid a decent amount of money is the head coach. And that head coach is then using you and paying you. I've seen teams, I've been a part of teams before, where the owner will come into me and say, well, we've got this much money to pay to players, but we could pay like a quarterback, a running back, $500, $1,000 a game if we could just find 10 guys that are willing to play for $25 or $50. And the sad thing is this, if you were to put out a post saying we're going to have a tryout and it's going to cost you $100 to play, and we'll pay you $25 a game, you would have 100 guys show up for that opportunity to make $25. I mean, these guys are desperate, they're delusional, and this is the thing. If you're 26, 27 years old, and you're playing arena or indoor football, it better be because you just want to play football, because you're not going to the NFL from there. I mean, a year or two out of college, you go tear it up in the Arena Football League, indoor football, yeah, you got a chance. But the opportunities are very limited because there just aren't that many jobs. And as you said, 90,000. So I would say if that's basketball and football, probably 70,000 of them are football players because you got 100, 120 guys on each roster. So when you look at that, I mean, there's 32 teams with 53 jobs. And there's 70,000 guys that are coming out of college this year trying to get one of those jobs. And those jobs are already filled, so you've got to take it from somebody. And then the next year, there's another 70,000 people coming out. I mean, there's a graduating class every year, and you've got Division I, Division II, Division III, 1AA, NAIA Division I, NAIA Division II. I mean, the amount of colleges that have football teams is unreal. And it's just, they give these guys a false hope from the time they're little. You're going to play in the NFL. You're going to play in the... No, you're probably not. Even if you're good enough, you may never get the opportunity to play in the NFL because a lot of times it's who you know or what college you went to. You know, if you're a great football player and you went to the University of Akron, a mediocre player from Ohio State's probably going to get the shot before you are. So they fill these guys full of false hopes. They do not prepare them for life after football, and they leave college with injuries that may affect them their whole lives that they're going to have to pay for. So when people say that a college football player or a college basketball player shouldn't be paid, they're just stupid.
Yeah, and so poignant and so right. And going back to Shamar, I believe he got his degree from Rutgers University. Did he not? I think he graduated.
I think so. Yeah.
Because he went to the Chicago Bears camp, and on the last day of practice, he injured his shoulder. He tried to hide it from the team, but they caught it and they released him. And that was pretty much sealed the deal and ended his opportunity at professional football. That he had done well enough. But here's a guy where they chronicled his day. He would get up at 4 a.m. He would go to Old Navy and he would stock the shelves for Old Navy from 4 to 9. At 9, he would go substitute teach or taught class until about 2:30, 3 o'clock. Then he would go coach football for a team, maybe the high school team or whatever, but he would go coach football. And then after that, he would go, after football practice, would go and would bounce at a bar. Was a bouncer at a bar, or security was on the back of his shirt. And the counselor that was working with him was asking him, and he said he made about $1,500 a month for doing all that. Now, where is the NCAA? If you're going to have a student athlete, why does the NCAA not require you take a life as a student athlete, and all the money that we bring in, we require that every student athlete that enrolls takes a life preparation class?
Yeah, but you know what? If you get a legit college degree, you probably should have that anyways. I mean, it's always blown my mind that and this goes more than high school. I mean, shouldn't you have this or college? Shouldn't you have this in high school? If you're a senior, there should be a life class that teaches you what a credit card is, how it works.
Right.
If you use
how to manage your checking
what
account.
happens to it. Yeah, a checking account, how to get a home loan. All this stuff should be built in from the time you're probably a junior in high school, and it's not done at all. And that's why the public education system has failed miserably, and that's why our country is probably dumber than it's ever been. I mean, you just have a bunch of people that know how to get on an iPhone and search some stuff. I was explaining to my kids the other day. I'm like, man, you know, in 1978, 1985, when we wanted to look up to see what something was, we'd have to go get, you know, that volume of the Encyclopedia Britannica to see what it was. You couldn't just punch it into your phone.
No, but the NCAA, again, you're exactly right. In the NCAA, why would they not mandate that every student athlete has to take every university has to offer a class to student athletes of life preparation.
You want me to tell you why, Steve? I can give you an answer.
Give me an answer.
Okay. We talk about the plantation education and how these athletes
Yeah.
were white, black,
Because
whatever,
you're telling
slaves.
me Swahili,
The dumber,
Swahili
no,
is more
hold
important
on.
than
The
managing
dumber,
a checking account.
Hey, the slave masters a few hundred years ago didn't ever want to teach, the slaves how to read. They
Be
didn't
smart,
want them to know
how to
how to
read.
write. They want them to
Right.
be stupid. If you start teaching
Stupid.
kids life skills, then maybe all of a sudden it's going to click in that, hey, we're being taken advantage of.
Yeah. No, you're right on. I buy it now. I didn't want to buy it until I watched this and just thought how we cannot mandate that these athletes have to take at least one class a semester a year, or for 4 years, or for 4 years take a class on life management. And that's what the NCAA gives back to the student athlete for saying, we don't pay you, but we prepare you. All right? And if I was marketing the NCAA, I would probably come out with that. We don't pay you, but we prepare you. We mandate that all student athletes take a life preparation class. And there are people who will still screw that up. That's a given.
Plus, if you wanted to do that and you wanted to prepare them, you would do that. And you would also give them insurance while they're there that they don't have to pay for. And since they bring so much money in, you go see a doctor at the end of your 4 years after you graduate, any injury that you have from there, they will take care of for as long as you live.
Right. Any injury related to your playing days in college athletics. Yeah, if like I tore my back up playing college basketball, and Indiana would be accountable for that as long as that injury sustained, as long as I could relate it back to the fact that the damage that I have done is done from the result of the injury I incurred while playing at Indiana. Now, fortunately for somebody like me, I kind of had that, and that most of the doctors that took care of me at IU when I hurt my back still took care of me afterwards because of the community of Indiana University. But that's not true at all universities.
No.
And Indiana certainly is one of the wealthier universities. So when my back was tore up, I would go to the same doctors that took care of me when I was at IU, and they would not charge me, or they would just take whatever my insurance paid.
Don't you think that's got something to do with Coach Knight wanting to take care of his players?
Sure, I think it has everything to do with Coach Knight wanting to take care of his players.
If he found out that they were refusing you service,
he stopped using them.
Yeah. So, I mean,
he just
the
said,
thing
fine.
is this. In the long run, Bobby Knight catches a lot of crap, and he may have done a lot of things at the end of his coaching career at Indiana that weren't right, but he always took care of his players. Guys like Rick Pitino take care of Rick Pitino,
Right.
I mean, that's just the way it is. John Calipari, I don't know about him, but I've got a pretty good inkling at what goes on there. But we know guys like Rick Pitino, Eddie Sutton, they take care of themselves. So when that's why I still defend Bobby Knight, even though I know he did some stuff that he shouldn't have done, especially towards the end. But from talking to you, and I've talked to other former players at IU, I've even talked to a couple guys that played for him at Texas Tech, and the thing that I do know is this. He always took care of his players, and the guys that played for 4 years for him all respect him.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And to further take it with the Shamar Graves situation, I actually, when I moved out to California, there was an opening for an assistant coaching position at a university out here that I applied for and got to have the opportunity to talk to some people. Now, granted, I had not coached college basketball, yet I felt that I had great coaching knowledge, having been a manager for a major pharmaceutical company for 25 years, knew how to manage people, knew how to coach people, how to motivate them, how to get them to do things. I had an incredible history of basketball with a championship ring and all the credentials, which is what got me the opportunity to speak to the people. And so I went into the interview and knowing that my weaknesses would be that on my resume doesn't say that I coached at 20 different colleges for the last 25 years, but I thought, what can I bring to the table that was different? And that I could go to the coaching staff or the hiring committee and say, this is where I would be an advantage to your program. And I talked exactly about the fact that I had his business degree, long-standing career with Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, and had had some great success in it. But I could help coach. Definitely, I knew the X's and O's of basketball and had letters from a lot of former Knight players. From Knight himself, I had letters saying, validated that the guy knows the game well enough that he could be an assistant effective as a coach. But I brought to the table to them, I've also got 25 years of experience in the real world of getting people jobs, of hiring people, of teaching them how to get hired, about how to progress their careers in longevity, and how to make something of themselves outside of sport. And I focused on that. I never got a second interview. They weren't interested in that. They wanted to know what high school coaches I knew in California that I could go and be buddies with so that I could get an inside and recruit. That's all they cared about. And I said, well, I don't know nobody. I just moved to California 2 months ago. So take me back to Indiana, I probably could walk into any high school there is in the world in Indiana. But out here, I know nobody. Never got a call back. But exactly what we're talking about the NCAA is teaching kids how to prepare for life and making that a core curriculum for student athletes, not Swahili at North Carolina University.
Yeah.
That just cracks me up the more I hear that. Because I heard that from McCants, and then I hear it from John Shue about the kids bitching about having to take Swahili. When am I ever going to use Swahili? Seriously. But I went in there with that mindset saying, I can bring something totally different here. In that I can work with these kids and say, here, no, this is how you got to dress. This is how you got to act. This is how you answer questions. This is the questions you're going to get asked in an interview. They didn't care. The university I interviewed with, and I'm not going to name them, they didn't care. All they cared about was what high school coaches would I be able to go to and build a relationship with. And that's the mindset of the NCAA. What can you do to help me make more profit or bring a better player into so I can win games so I can make more profit? It's a sad state. So, it's really sad. A lot of this is going to come out, but you ought to watch the documentary because it talks about a couple other players too. One who ended up in a mental hospital. Yeah. The kid, Mike Shaw. Mike Shaw, who's a highly sought-after recruit out of Chicago, went to De La Salle High School, which is a famed high school in Chicago, recruited heavily by just about everybody, ended up at Illinois. And then there's another story. He goes to Illinois, and here's a kid who makes a commitment and takes his talents. So he's got a gifted player, great talent, goes to Illinois. The coach is fired. Bruce Weber was the coach. Coach got terminated after his freshman year. Shaw is a contributing player, a significant contributing player. The new coach comes in and says, I don't think I'm going to use you in my program. So he transfers to Bradley University, gets injured. Bradley allows him to continue to play, exacerbates his injury to the point where then he's just forced out of the game. And while I give Bradley credit, they honored his degree or his scholarship. He got his degree, but at that point he got tossed aside by Bradley and got no help from him ever again, and ended up, I think the last thing we see of him is he's picking up trash in a park, is he not? Having been in and out of mental hospitals and no future, with a terrible back, medical bills out the butt, terrible physical disabilities, and he's in and out of a mental hospital. And here's a kid who's 25, 26, 27, 30 years old, somewhere in that range, staring at Lake Michigan. They show a very poignant picture of him staring at Lake Michigan like, I have no future. I have nothing. Yet I have a college education. I had this talent, and it all got taken away from me. And he had to sit out a year. And that's the other thing. Did they change the rule about sitting out in college hoops? Did that rule get changed? Am I imagining that? Or did they do away with the rule?
I think you still have to sit. I think, like, if you were in Indiana and you transfer to Iowa, I think you still have to sit out a year if it's in college.
That's a Big Ten rule, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I know with the Big Ten, so I'm not 100% sure on that.
But that's the Condoleezza Commission, I call it. The NCAA's commission where they were going to change and do the dummy fact-finding and all the regulations that they changed and didn't change anything. But the fact that athletes have to sit out a year to change schools is absurd.
Yeah, coach doesn't have to.
Coach doesn't have to. Trainers don't have to. Presidents of universities don't have to. NCAA executives don't have to. Just the student athletes have to sit out an entire year. In a year, I can tell you, when I got out of college and I tried out immediately for the Phoenix Suns, didn't make the team, went over to Europe, played, and the game is not nearly as skilled as it was in the United States. And missing that year, that high level of competition, came back the next year and tried out with the Pacers. My skills had diminished so much that you weren't a factor in the tryouts. You fell off. You're dropping. So you force a kid to sit out a year and not be able to play, it pretty well trashes their career. It takes that year that you take off is very detrimental to the growth and development of a student athlete.
All right,
at that
real
point
quick,
in time.
One-time transfer exception. NCAA rules, this is from their page. If you transfer from a 4-year school, you may be immediately eligible to compete at your new school if you meet all the following conditions. You are transferring to a Division II or III school, or you are transferring to a Division I school in any sport other than baseball, men's or women's basketball, or football bowl subdivision, or men's ice hockey. If you're transferring to a Division I school for any of the previously listed sports, you may be able to compete immediately if you were not recruited by your original school and you have never received an athletic scholarship. So, yeah, you still have to sit out a year.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
But, and how they can selectively pick schools, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess the moral story here is and we'll wrap up the whole thing on the NCAA because we could beat this dead horse to Paul.
Yeah, we probably will next week as more stuff comes out, so stay with us.
More stuff comes out on the trial. Yeah, I think the trials get worse. But the bottom line is that people are just too enthralled with the fun of watching college athletics, and they are fun to watch because the kids on the field put their heart and soul into the games that they play. The cheerleaders cheer for real. They don't put on outfits you buy at Victoria's Secrets and skimp around and you know, they put on cheerleading outfits. They cheer. They do cheers. The fans have fans. The students have student sections where they get crazy and do things. And there's an atmosphere and a culture that's created in college athletics that we all love to go back to in basketball and in football. And the NCAA just totally capitalizes on that. But yet they do. I hate to use the word slave, but it's what it's basically come down to now, is to where these student athletes have no rights anymore. And the profitability of the whole concept of college athletics has gone so far through the roof that it's got to change, and it's got to change quickly. It's going to change quickly, and if the NCAA is not smart, they're going to initiate the change before the change just happens to them. There'll be some lawyer who will be smart enough, or some legal group that will be smart enough that will know how to organize the players into what we want to call a facsimile of a union that will act as a cohesive unit, that will all of a sudden have bargaining power. And then at that point, the NCAA will be screwed to hell. They will cease to exist.
Let's move on, and we're just going to hit like 2 or 3 subjects. We're only going to take a couple minutes on each one, and then we're going to wrap it up. But we're going to start off with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who are undefeated, ranked 6th in the nation. Are they for real, Steve?
They're for real in a sense that this is one of the better Notre Dame teams that we've seen. Ian Book was a great move for them to move into what I want to call a pro-style quarterback, to run an offense. And he's doing a fantastic job. He's moved into the position very well. Are they for real for the college playoffs? I don't think they can touch Alabama. I don't think they can touch Clemson. I don't think they're that good. I think this is a huge test for them against, what was it, West Virginia?
No, Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech. I get those two confused all the time. My bad. Virginia Tech. This is a huge test. But the test beyond this for Notre Dame is they tend to win these games but then they go and then they lose to Navy. They end up losing a game they shouldn't lose. I think in the end, Notre Dame will be a 1 or maybe 2-loss team. I don't think they'll be able to sustain this for the full year. They're relying very heavily on Book right now. They've got a good, solid defense. And I think they're a darling team right now because it's Notre Dame. Everybody loves Notre Dame. Who's still thinking Newt Rockne, who's still thinking of the Gipper, still thinking of the Four Horsemen, Joe Montana, Dan Devine. I mean, Lou Holtz. You can go down the list of all the historic figures who've been part of Notre Dame. And we always want to equate it back to that. But I don't think that this is a team that's going to compete for a national championship. They're competing right now for television ratings, great, every one of their games. I've watched every Notre Dame game. And this is as good a Notre Dame team as I've seen play in a long time. But I don't think they're anywhere near good enough to compete with Alabama.
I disagree. I think when you look at them, their front seven with Jerry Tillery, Khalid Kareem, Julian Akware. You got a quarterback in Ian Book that's completing 75% of his passes. Dexter Williams and Tony Jones are both really good running backs. And on top of that, I mean, the defensive secondary, I think, has been the thing that surprised me this year, especially safeties Jalen Elliott, Louis Gilman, and Houston Griffith, plus Nick Coleman. I mean, this team, I think they're a complete team. And when you look at their schedule, you know, I mean, it's not extremely difficult, but it does have those games there, which you've talked about, where, you know, they're at Navy. But I don't think Navy's as good as what they have been. They are at USC. USC's not as good, but it's a West Coast trip. They get Syracuse, and they got to play them in New York. Syracuse is a team that almost beat Clemson this last week. Northwestern is a team that's capable of, you know, upsetting you. You get Florida State at home. Florida State's down a little bit this year. My concern when you say that they're not capable of it is if you go look at Alabama. I don't think – I mean, we know that Alabama's always good. But how good are they? I mean, what's their schedule been so far? And I think you get a good shot at a loss by Alabama at some point just because they haven't played anybody yet. Excuse me. And if you look at what they got to play, they beat Louisville, who's a bad team. Arkansas State's bad. Ole Miss is not very good. Texas A&M's an all right team. They beat Louisiana Lafayette. Now they're going to play Arkansas. They play Missouri, who's decent, but it's at Bama. Tennessee's terrible. But then they go to LSU. I think that could be a loss just because LSU's battle tested, Alabama's not. Mississippi State's a good team, but they're not going to beat Alabama. Then Alabama plays the freaking Citadel. On November 17th, what's supposed to be the best team in the country is playing the Citadel. Then they host Auburn. So I think even if Notre Dame was to have one loss there, they may have a better resume. But you know we're not looking at resume because it's Alabama. But, yeah, I believe that Notre Dame is a legit contender if they beat Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is one of the toughest places in the country to play. They've got a great entrance when they play Enter the Sandman. Everybody's jumping up and down. So I think this is their first true road test. I know Wake Forest was on the road, but Wake Forest is nowhere near as good as, you know, Virginia Tech. So in the end, I think if Notre Dame wins this game, I think they have a legit shot to make the college football playoffs.
I don't think they do. I think you got Ohio State sitting out there now.
Yeah, who beats a Penn State team that's not that good on the last play of the game. I just don't buy it, Steve. I mean, these teams, Ohio State had trouble with TCU. When you look at Notre Dame, defensively up front and in the secondary, especially up front, the front four, they can get after the quarterback without having to blitz. They've got two quality running backs. They've got a good offensive line, not as good as last year. But Ian Book is a really good quarterback, and they struggled with Ball State.
Ian Book is the real deal.
Yeah, they struggled with Ball State early, Vanderbilt, but they didn't have Book playing. Book, since he's been the starter, this team is scoring. They played Stanford, who was ranked 8th. I mean, Alabama has not played competition like that. So I don't think until Alabama plays LSU, you can even make a comparison with Notre Dame because they haven't played anybody. I mean, Notre Dame's also going to play Virginia Tech. I mean, Virginia Tech is a legit top 15 team, top 20 team in the country, I think, when all's said and done.
Well,
so
yeah, let's see how they get through. Look,
Yeah.
I'm a Notre Dame fan. I don't miss a Notre Dame football game. I love Notre Dame football. I mean, that's my favorite college football team, even above Indiana. I would rather watch Notre Dame play. They play 5 o'clock out in L.A. on Saturday night. I'm told my wife we're cooking out and I'm watching Notre Dame football play Virginia Tech. I mean, I'm watching that game start to finish. So, but I just don't. I don't. You know, and the thing you haven't mentioned yet is Brian Kelly.
Yeah, I hate him.
Is he a coach who's capable of taking a team to a national championship? I mean, at some point, what I've told everybody about NCAA basketball, and it holds true to football too, talent gets you to the Sweet 16. Talent and coaching get you to the Final Four. Coaching wins the championship for you. And, you know, that's fine. Talent is getting Notre Dame going right now, which is all good. But then as they get farther down the road and the bullseye gets bigger on their back, coaching is going to have to play a bigger role in what goes on. And is Brian Kelly capable of taking Notre Dame to the national championship game with an opportunity to win it?
All right, let's transition.
My dog doesn't think so.
Let's transition to the NFL because I know that's why your dog barks as if we haven't talked about NFL. Let's do a little upset alert on Friday here. Give me 2 games where you think an upset will happen in the NFL this weekend.
All right, wait a minute. Give me your games first because I got to go to the board here real quick.
I'm going to take the Falcons over the Steelers. I think the Falcons' offense is going to torch Pittsburgh's secondary, and I don't think that Pittsburgh has the offense that the Saints or the Bengals have to keep up with them, especially without Le'Veon Bell. So I'm going to take the Falcons there, and I'm going to take.
I disagree.
It doesn't matter if you disagree. I'm giving my upset picks. You quiet down. You asked me to go first because you were obviously unprepared. Next up, I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions over the Green Bay Packers. I think the Lions have played a lot better lately. I think the Packers have shown that they have deep problems on that team, and I think they're between the head coach, Mike McCarthy, and Aaron Rodgers. So I look for the Lions to upset the Packers. And then I'll give you a couple other games to watch for that I don't think are necessarily upsets, but could happen. I think the Jaguars could go into Kansas City and take care of the Chiefs. I think the Vikings-Eagles is a game to look at. I think the Vikings could pull the upset there because the Eagles have not played well lately. The Vikings have a lot of offense. I don't know if the Eagles' offense can keep up with them or not. And I'll throw in the Browns-Ravens because the Browns will keep it close and blow it at the end. What do you got, Steve?
All right, why don't I just do locks of the week then, since you did upsets? Because
okay.
I agree with all of your picks on upsets.
Okay, give me 3 locks.
Okay, my first lock is Cincinnati over Miami. I think the Bengals are for real. I think the Bengals are right now one of the most underrated teams in the NFL. I think they're getting taken seriously, but not to the level I think that team is as good as
but
they
they
really
never
are.
will until the playoff game is won. They could go 15-1 and nobody's taking it seriously until they win that playoff game.
But nobody, that's okay. Don't take it seriously. Let them stay under the radar screen. Let them just stay there, and everybody say, well, Marv can't get them to the playoffs. I think this is the year the Bengals make impact. I like this football team. I think that they may struggle losing again the rest of the year. I don't look at their schedule, and, you know, this is a good football team. Dalton is clicking. Green is running routes. I mean, they got running game. They have the full package, and I think the Bengals are the sleeper in the NFL right now. They're going to sneak through, and I think that they're going to give Jacksonville a huge run for its money. So, to me, the other lock of the week is the Rams over Seattle.
Yeah, that's a definite lock.
I think, Rams are just not going to go anywhere. And my third lock of the week would be Carolina over the New York Giants. The Giants are just done. They're not going to win again as long as Eli Manning's their quarterback. And I know you posted an article on our page
so
about.
Don't give me no crap.
Well, whoever wrote it, I'm a Manning fan because of Peyton in Indianapolis for so many years, and I've always liked the Manning family, but that team is not going to win as long as they keep Eli Manning as their quarterback.
Okay.
He appears to play the game at half speed. He makes so many inept plays for somebody who's got so much success under his belt that he does. And I don't think that the Giants are an untalented football team. Crap, they've got the highest paid, best receiver in the game.
No, they don't.
And they've got allegedly Odell Beckham.
He's not the best receiver in the game. He's not even close.
All right. Well, he's highest
Julio
paid.
Jones, A.J. Green,
Yeah.
Antonio
No,
Brown.
one of the best. One of the best.
That's better.
And then definitely Tennessee over Buffalo. Tennessee is really emerging into a good football team all of a sudden very quickly. They're coming out of nowhere where I think they're gonna compete with Jacksonville for that division championship before long.
All right.
If they're not already doing it right now.
I disagree on the Giants being talented because whenever your offensive line's that bad, you're not a very good team. All right, guys. We will be back next Monday. Next Wednesday night, the Indiana Basketball Weekly Show will be back also. We may do a special edition of it. What do you think, Steve? I don't know. Before Wednesday. We'll just have you come on and talk about 1981.
Nobody wants to hear about that.
I think they do. Indiana fans do. Plus, I'm going to go through all the games where you didn't score a point. We're only going to talk about those games.
The only thing relevant to talk about in 1981 was me and Isaiah.
I thought it was
Other than
Isaiah and Bobby Knight, and then of course Landon Turner, and
those guys had nothing to do with it. It was Isaiah and me.
I know it was you and Isaiah. You guys were like ebony and ivory. I remember the posters in downtown Bloomington on the walls. All right, guys. Remember, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.